You're listening to Mark of the Maker. Hey everybody, I'm Mark Steiner and you're listening to Mark of the Maker. This is episode 121 of the show. This is, as promised, a little clips episode. We took a portable recorder to the Pacific Northwest show. And Sean and I should mention that. Sean's here with me, by the way. Welcome, Sean.
Hey. Greetings and salutations, folks.
So Sean and I were the roving reporters on the scene at at the Pacific Northwest show. It's always kind of fun, right?
Oh, yeah. It's a total man on the street sort of vibe.
Yeah. We got this little portable digital recorder. Although this time we didn't have... Oh, no, you brought headphones. Sean covered the headphones. We got a microphone and we just grabbed some people that we want to chat with. And you heard one of our intros last time from Grace Horn from the show. And yeah, it's a nice way to just kind of get around and chit-chat and catch up with some friends.
Oh, yeah, always a good time. I really enjoy when we are able to do that at a show.
Yeah, it's very fun. We got to get some business out of the way first. We need to thank our friends on Patreon, patreon.com. Go there, look for Mark of the Maker, and you can find us. It's a way to support the show. There's opportunity to pledge a few bucks to many bucks a month as a way to help support the show and sort of help keep the lights on around here. We frequently have microphones blasting back and forth across the country, replacing them, paying web servers and recording service and all kinds of crazy stuff. So if you are into that, please go to patreon.com and look us up and feel free to jump in and give us some help. If you don't, that's okay. We're going to keep doing it anyway. But for everybody that's been out there for a long, long time sticking with us and keeping the show afloat, we greatly appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you, folks. You are long-suffering and we certainly appreciate it.
All right, what's our next one, Sean?
All right, our next sponsor is Giant Mouse. So you can head over to giantmouse.com, and I suggest you check out their Ace Atelier Burlap Micarta, limited to 300 pieces that they're doing right now. Man, this is a great-looking knife. Burlap Micarta, and is kind of typical when they do the burlap editions. It has a black backspacer and a PVD-coated LMAX blade, and it's just a fantastic-looking package. And, you know, like all of their knives, it's going to perform. It's not going to just look good. It's actually going to work good, too. And, you know, they're not just a pocket knife company. They're pretty much full service. They've got fixed blades. They've got kitchen knives. They've got your EDC pieces. If they ain't got it, you probably don't need it. So head over to giantmouse.com and check out what they got going on. You won't regret it.
Definitely.
And then after that, we've got Bob and Sue's Terzola. We really appreciate, and to be honest with you, I'm kind of flattered that they sponsor the show. They're just two great folks. Bob's a living legend, and if you guys want to get in on Bob's stuff, head over to terzola.net. You can get in on any knife drops he has coming up. You can get on the wait list for any drops that are in the works. You can check out a free sample of his Sharp Life video series. And you can sign up to get on the wait list for his Shop Talk series. And also there's a link to the Knife Wife podcast, which actually the most recent episode has Billy Cho and his wife Esther on it. And that really tickled me, and I can't wait to sit down and turn it on in the shop and give it a listen, as it were. So head over to terzola.net and tell them Sean sent you, and that's terzola.net.
Yeah, very cool thing Susie's got going on over there. I have that on my list for this week. I got a bunch of driving I got to do, so definitely got to listen to Billy and Esther. I'm sure that's a fun and entertaining conversation.
Oh, how could it not be?
Yeah. All right, we also want to thank our friends at Knife Joy. KnifeJoy.com is a knife dealer. They have a partner site called Ammo Joy. And they got all kinds of stuff going on at Knife Joy. They have lots of production knives. I was actually just looking at this. They have a whole... Because I'm kind of a sucker for Chris Reeve knives. Sean, I know you know that. You are too sometimes, right? Especially that Halloween-looking stuff. They got a whole bunch of Reeve knives, and they have a big stack of unique graphic stuff, which is always really fun because they're just a wide variety of graphics they do on the handle. I know lots of people collect those things, and there's some great looking examples in there. So definitely check those out. They have some other customer kind of programs at Knife Joy around, discounts and other stuff. So definitely check that out as well. They have some exclusives that you can only get from them. So knifejoy.com. Appreciate you guys for your support of the show.
Yeah, thank you. And our last but not least sponsor is Paladin 33. Man, in my opinion, Paladin 33 is like the Gucci of nylon totes and accessories. Like, they've got me doing the fanny pack thing. And the product I really want to spotlight is I have one of their totes, and it is just a fantastically well-made, well-thought-out tote. I mean, it's a real multitasker. Can't recommend it well enough. And I know Josh always has new and interesting stuff in the works. So head over to paladin33.com and check out all the goodness he's got offered there.
Yes, for sure. That tote's really slick. It's got a baggage cart handle slot in it and all kinds of stuff. Super, super cool.
Oh, dude, I mean, it would cause the ad reads to run a little long if we went into all the features on it. It's very well thought out. Everything. It's just a real eye to detail.
2 solid things checked off my Sean Kendrick bingo card. Sean wearing a fanny pack, and Sean plugging totes.
Yeah, right. We live in an age of wonders and monsters.
It's a mysterious time we live in. Yeah, we really appreciate you, Josh, and team at Paladin 33. Thanks for coming on board with us.
Absolutely.
All right. So we promised this show intro. I explained a little bit at the beginning. These are a whole bunch of clips from the floor. Sean and I kind of went around, and we'll alternate these. We'll go back and forth a little bit on who talked to who, and it's a variety of stuff, right? Some of it's just kind of, hey, checking in and how's the show going? And some of it gets a little bit deeper. And so you hear kind of a mixture of that as we get through these. So you want to talk about this? Oh, no, I'll talk about the first one, I guess. This first one that we spoke with was Mr. Nick Rossi, the OG of our friends of the show. So let's hear from Nick.
Okay, so I'm here with original friend of the show, Mr. Nick Rossi, our very first ever guest on the show, who's joined us a couple times now. Nick, why don't you've been to the show before, why don't you share your thoughts about the Pacific Northwest show?
Well, I absolutely love this show. I've done this a few times, and it's a great crowd and a great location, just a really beautiful part of the country. I'm really only here for the scenery, but if I sell a few knives, that's kind of nice too.
So how does this compare, Nick, to the kind of stuff you would do in your local show stuff when you do it? Look like maybe you're more kitchen focused with some of the stuff that you do for your shows in Maine that you go to, or maybe I'm mischaracterizing versus what you brought here, which is kind of a cross section.
No, I think you're about right here. I'd say I've got a few less weird handle colors than I normally do at the craft shows, but I've still got some weird colors. But people just like kitchen knives and hunting knives, so it's kind of the same, mostly the same stuff.
Yeah, these are all great looking knives. And obviously all your own Damascus for people who might not remember, is in most cases anyway.
It's mostly always my own Damascus, and I've got some forged Magna Cut and some forged AEBL. I've been talking to Laren a little bit and messing around with some forged stainless, and it has some challenges, but it's really not that bad, and I'm happy to have some of those on display here as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Nick.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Nick Rossi. He had some beautiful knives. Beautiful ones at the show.
No surprise there.
He was close to where you were at in the show floor, right? Nearby anyway?
Yeah, I could see him from where I was at, pretty much line of sight.
You had a beautiful view of Nick Rossi.
Indeed. Is there any other view of Nick Rossi?
I don't think so. It was great to see him. We chatted a little bit out at the beach with Nick in the after party, and it was absolutely a pleasure. Always is. So, Sean, you want to introduce this next one?
Yeah, it's my dude Brian Efros. I always appreciate a chance to get to talk to Brian at the show, and it was really great that we were able to get his thoughts on how things went.
We're here at PNWCI with Brian Efros. Hey, buddy, good to see you. How's the show been treating you this year?
Well, it's been a great show. I'm so happy to be here. It's just really a good show that embraces the community and is really fun to be a part of because it's it's getting to be a part of something special with everyone together.
Awesome, man. Great take on it. Thank you.
It's always a vibe with Brian, isn't it?
Indeed. He vibes hard.
Yeah. I'm not sure. Maybe this is, maybe I'm not reading him the right way, but my take, every time I've talked to Brian, he's always like encouraging, trying hard to be upbeat, even when shit is bad, right? When stuff's not going right, he is working hard to try to have a positive attitude. And I really appreciate that. I'm not sure. Do you see that as well?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, dude, it's hard to miss.
Yeah. Just
Super, super positive guy.
Enjoy
His
it,
cup's
Jack.
usually half full.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great way to put it. All right. This next one's a little bit longer. I got with Grace Horn when we were there, and she had sold all the scissors, which is no surprise. They went very, very quickly. They always do. She brought some pretty small scissors this time, so that was really interesting. So we talk a little bit about that and a little bit about her class that she's doing. She's actually done a series of them and some of her adventures here in the U.S. So here's Grace Horn.
Okay, I'm here with Grace Horn, and we're at the Pacific Northwest show, who I just bought scissors from my wife, who is very excited to have a very tiny pair of scissors. If you've been following Grace's Instagram or Facebook, she's been sharing lots of images of what she's been working on for this show, and they are, I think, all quite small scissors. Maybe, can you talk a little bit about that, Grace? Why the small scissors, or what took you there, and kind of on that theme for this show?
So this was actually a project that I'm doing. So sometimes I design from scratch for scissors, and sometimes I do modern interpretations of historical pieces. But these were actually all direct reproductions from an old pattern book. And this was their size. So they're the size that they are on the table with the size that they were originally. And I think that actually I was surprised at how small they were. Like the little monsters, that I kind of knew they were going to be small, but even the cigar scissors. And this is one of the important things about making them, because now if I made them again, I'd probably make them 10% bigger. They seem really small for today's market. And I don't know whether that's just to do with bigger hands, or, whether it's just what we expect these days, but they all seemed rather small. And that's not a problem, because I love making small things, but, I would probably make them a little bit bigger next time.
What kind of time frame are these designs from?
That's difficult to tell, because this book is from, I know that it was printed in 1920, but we don't know when the original dies, and it's from a drop forger from Germany. So some of the designs are obviously much older, and then some of them are kind of Art Deco and much more recent. And that range is quite lovely, and some of them are really endearing, and that's one of the reasons why I'm making them.
It's interesting that, and I think you do a really nice job of this with your social media, when you're going through the process of creating the work, of helping people to understand the scale. And like when you did the tiny microscopic scissors, right? It was so cool to realize, because everything when you look at it on your phone looks the same size, right? You see a giant sword and it fits on your phone screen. You see these tiny little monster scissors and they fit on your phone screen and fill up the page. And then when you see them in person, it's like, oh, they are really, really small. So that's kind of fascinating. One of the things that we saw is that the scissors that you brought, they're all very dark coloration, which I thought was interesting. Can you talk a little bit about that and why, and I don't know, maybe what you think it adds to the work?
Well, I made a conscious effort this time not to make them out of Damascus steel. I wanted to make them out of a mono steel, because I didn't want anything to distract from the form. And a lot of them are very filed, and they're very three-dimensional, and you have a lot going on there already. And I like the matte black. In hindsight, I think it's a little bit too matte, so they just look like shadows when they're on my display. And I think that people are often surprised who don't know my work when they come and pick them up and they see the detail on them. Now, over time, what will happen is that black will wear off a little bit, and you'll get highlights that will show the tops of the three-dimensionality, and I like that. I like the fact that these pieces will go on to have an additional life that will tell the story of how they're used, and I would really like them to be used. I think that next time what I'll do is actually do some of that work myself before I sell them, so that you can see the tops of the patterns of the designs. It's an aesthetic thing, but I think that they did look very stark black and white on my table.
Yeah, they very much stand out against the display boxes for sure. What so you said this is your first time coming to this show. What's your impression of this kind of show? It's a very interesting mixture of people and stuff, which I think is intentional by Nick and Billy. But I'm interested to know what you think.
Yeah, I'm loving it so far. So I've had a little look round, and you're right, the breadth of people that they've got here is great. I spoke to Michael Walker earlier, and, had a little bit of a fangirl moment, and yeah, it's wonderful to see so many different people and to see, yeah. And despite all the travel difficulties, it's nice to see everybody from everywhere all around. Yeah.
Yeah, people have come from quite far, obviously, with yourself included, to come to this one. Even for us, it's still a 2,000-mile trip, right? Which is kind of crazy to think about. So you're going to do a scissor class. You've been doing a number of these, right? How many have you done?
This is my fourth one, but it feels like it's something that the demand is certainly there. They fill up straight away, and it's something that's becoming increasingly important to me. I can see that there's definitely a desire for it, so it's something that I'm going to be working on. This will be nice. This is I offered places on the course for table holders, and filled it really fast, and it's really nice. I always try and teach other knife makers because they already have the groundwork. So I'm not teaching them to use machines, I'm just teaching them the scissory bit that they need to know. Yeah, I've got Luke Swenson next week. Teacher's pet and all that. And then I've got a couple of weeks, and then I go over to the New England School of Metalwork and teach another course there. So, yeah.
And did I hear correctly? Are you doing more stuff with Jason Knight? Is that coming later as well? Okay. Let's talk a little bit about that. Jason's a very cool person, interesting character. You've done multiple scissor courses there, right, with Jason, or just one previously?
So Jason was on one of my courses. That's how this started. And then he had such fun that he invited me to come and teach at his workshop. So it'll be the first time I'm teaching at his place. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. That's October. If I travel much more times to the States this year, they're going to start asking whether I don't stay, really that.
Yeah, they'll try to collect taxes. That's how that's where it'll begin. Yeah. Have you had people who've taken your course go on to make, beyond the class, to make scissors, or do you find that most people that are doing it are using it as like a skill building type of thing, or do you think there's real intent there that people are going to make stuff?
I don't really care whether they do or not. I think that there are some people who come to the course that just want to make for the fun of it, and they never have any intention of making another pair of scissors in their life. There are some people who will then extrapolate that information and kind of make their own spin on it and have done another couple of pairs of scissors. But actually, there are. I also do a lot of online mentoring. So if people are like a couple of blacksmiths have asked me to help them make scissors, and then I can help them do that. And I know one of them has made half a dozen pairs of scissors. So that's not necessarily from direct person-to-person course, but online mentoring is actually also really important, and that helps get that information out there.
So one of the things that we try to do with the podcast is share forward history that people might not get in other ways, or make it more accessible to them. And with the interviews, just to help tell the story that all the makers are different. Sometimes people come into the room and think these people are all blacksmiths or machinists or whatever. And we like to help paint the picture or explain or show people that they have widely varying backgrounds and interests and everything else. I think you have this strong passion to try to share this right through the learning side of it. For you, what is the motivation to want to do that? What makes you want to share information about scissors and how to make them?
I think that anybody who is at the fine end of a dying craft has an obligation to pass it on. And also, I'm the recipient of a whole load of help and information that people have passed on to me, whether it be directly, but also, the fact that I can then go down and find information in a museum about a scissor maker that was working 100 years ago. If he hadn't documented that, I wouldn't have access to it. So documentation and passing it on, I think, is really valuable. And I don't believe in gatekeeping information. I think that the more people who know this sort of information, the better. And in an ideal world, I'd love to go to a show and see other scissor makers making scissors and know that I had a hand in making that information available to them to make use of.
Thanks, Grace, for chatting with us.
I thought it was really an interesting conversation.
Oh, yeah. And always great to talk to Grace. Dude, I'm always flattered when Grace even speaks to me, so.
I feel the same, yeah. Always a pleasure to chat with Grace. She gave us some really nice insight there. Very interesting stuff, right? She's always working to improve her craft and up her game, and you always like to see that in a maker. I always really appreciate that.
Oh, yeah, hell yeah. I mean, good enough's never good enough. You can tell.
All right. What's our next one, Sean?
It is Mr. Rob Babty of the Hate Dust Project. And now, me and Rob go a ways back. We'll get into that more at a later date and time. And I was really happy we were finally able to talk to him and get a clip of him at the show.
Yeah, it had been a while since I talked to Rob. Probably
yeah,
same
it
with
had
you.
been a minute.
Yeah.
Our paths just hadn't crossed.
Yeah. We'll have to trick him into coming on the show with us.
All right, I'm here at PNWCI with Rob Babty from the Hate Project. Hey, Rob, man, how's things going? How's the show treating you? You got anything in the works you'd like to talk to us about?
Absolutely. So, show's good. Billy and Nick have brought us out here. This is our third year with the show. Been here since the start, and so real nice turnout this year. Weather's kind of cooperated, even though we had a travel disaster yesterday. And so, yeah, I'm still kind of 10 years later. I'm still doing the nonprofit charity thing and swinging away at that, but it's been real nice. Good sized crowd this year. Lots of new makers added this year and stuff. So yeah. So as we've kind of moved through the show coming up, I think my next big thing for me is in the fall. I used to do a big show that we used to call Livestock, where I'd have a bunch of makers kind of make some custom little piggies and stuff for me, and I'd auction that stuff off. And as always, we give it to things like, Ronald McDonald House and Make-A-Wish and all that. So I'm going to bring that back this fall. So coming up in probably mid-October, late October, you guys will see some stuff from some of the makers here. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Awesome, man. Thank you. And good to see you, bud. Always.
Always, always.
Oh, man. Oh, great to catch up with Rob.
Yeah, man. I mean, I'm 110% behind the Hate Dust Project. And like I said, at a later date and time, we'll go more into that. That river runs kind of deep.
Yep, certainly does. And I think it's really cool that, it sort of started out as a project and then turned into its own entire ecosystem thing, right?
Oh,
And
definitely.
I think it's super cool that it has endured, and Rob and Andrea just keep rolling with it, and it's got its own following and kind of has exploded. But like you said, we'll get into that a little bit more in a future date.
Yeah, the Hate Project, you could say it's a study in unforeseen consequences.
Of all kinds, positive and negative, you name it.
Yeah, it runs the gamut.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's hear another friend of ours who is likely to have some fun things to say. Mr. Luke Swenson was at the show. Brought a few knives, really, really cool stuff. He made a swing guard auto. We'll talk about that a little bit here with Luke. But here's my catching up with Luke Swenson. I hadn't seen Luke in a while either, so here's our chat.
All right, so I'm at Luke Swenson's table, and Luke has 5 knives that he brought with him at the Pacific Northwest show. Luke, you want to talk about this show? Do you like this show? How does it compare to some of the other shows you do?
Well, to be honest, this is the first time I've actually made it up here. Last year, I didn't make it. I had house construction going on and all of that. So I don't really know. I wanted to kind of step out of the box a little bit and kind of get out of my comfort zone and do some things I don't normally do. And so that's what we did. We're going to see how it goes.
And Billy, I'm sure, shamed you into it.
Well, Billy, he bullies me regularly. He picks on me all the time. He talks bad about me. He says that I'm ignorant because I'm in North Idaho, and he's just a really kind of a mean guy. I don't know, a lot of people don't know that about Billy, but meanness is what I think of when I think of Billy Cho.
In a one-word description. Yeah. So, Luke, you were just telling me about some of the knives you brought. It's kind of a unique thing. You said it's the first time that you have this kind of lineup. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I brought some traditional lockbacks with me, but this is the first show I've been to in a long time without a slip joint on my table. So I've got a couple of liner locks and a couple of traditional lockbacks, and I've got one that has titanium liners and complete screw construction. So, like I said, we just kind of tried to get out of the box on this one, do something a little different.
The cartel just clutched their pearls at the all screw construction. You might get a notice in the mail.
I'm probably going to get the dreaded call from Bill Ruppel before too long and get a lecture. So,
boy, what's wrong with you?
I've had fun.
Luke, so talk about this one a little bit. You said this is a swing guard. Why don't you explain to kids at home what that knife is and kind of why you decided to make it?
Well, the traditional Coke bottle swing guard from Case is they have the Coke bottle in a slip joint version, but the swing guard is a traditional lockback. And basically this is basically that same pattern, but I use titanium liners and screw construction, and I put Mokatai bolsters on it. But the fit and getting these things to function right is still the same, no matter. It's just a little bit more difficult for me to get them apart and back together when I use screws.
And I think you said you had intention of making a auto like that.
Oh, I really think that an auto version of this would be cool. It would sound like some kind of a giant machine, just reach out there and lock. I mean, it already makes kind of a cool noise anyway, but
yeah, lots of clanking and mechanical sounds going on. Yep. Very cool. They're all beautiful, man.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I like the. I think I have a piece from you that has this. It's like almost like a honeycomb type.
That is wasp nest Damascus made by the late Chris Marks, Master Smith. Very, very good friend of mine. Very nice guy. That is the absolute last of his wasp nest steel that I have.
All right. Thanks, Luke.
You bet.
We'll swing back and talk to you later on.
Great. Talk to you soon. I might have whiskey by then.
It's guaranteed.
Sadly, I did not make it back for whiskey. But I am sure whiskey was had.
Oh, you can take that to the bank.
Yeah. Always got a little Billy Cho, Luke Swenson banter. There's always bombs being dropped.
I'll encourage that till the day I die.
Stones being thrown. It's always a fun thing. All right, Sean, we got another one here. What's the next one we're going to do?
Next up, JB Stout. And JB, what can I say? He's the JB Stout. Have a listen to what he's got to say.
Hey, I'm here at PNWCI with Jason Stout. Dude, good to see you. And how's PNWCI been for you?
The show was great. Of course, the climate here is amazing. Billy and Nick really put a lot of effort into the venue. There wasn't quite as big of a maker turnout. I think some people had to cancel for various reasons. But other than that, the show was a success. I haven't heard any complaints at all, and look forward to doing it again.
Man, you got any projects coming up you'd like to talk to us about?
Yes. So I'm currently going to do some stuff with Riot. Something I've been wanting to do for a long time. I've just been trying to figure out the right model, the right time to do it. Going to be doing some work with some other production companies like Concept. I've talked to a couple of guys at this show about some future projects possibly. Really looking forward to doing some more production work so I can get several knives out there at different price ranges, but trying to stay away from my custom market as far as possible.
Yeah, man, hell of a balancing act there, and thanks for taking the time to talk to us.
Man, that's Jason. He's always got irons in the fire.
That's a fact. That's a fact. Always got something going. And he continues to be creative with this stuff and do different things. I really like that.
Dude, he's just a sharp motherfucker. He really is.
Yeah. Clever. I'm putting him in the clever category.
I second that. I co-sign that.
All right. Okay, so there were a variety of makers at the show, right? There were tactical people, there was gadget people, there was almost like, there was hand-forged people, there was gun guys, there were all kinds of crazy stuff at this show. So that made it very, very interesting. One of the people that was there who was maybe a little bit outside the groove, but had some beautiful, beautiful work there, was a young guy named Will Stelter. And those who are frequent YouTube watchers will know the name very well. Will used to do some stuff with Alex Steele and has kind of gone and done his own thing. And he's making some beautiful, beautiful knives. So I sat down with Will for a couple minutes because I was really blown away by how good the work was.
All right, I'm here with Will Stelter, and he's got some beautiful knives on his table, some really pretty fixed blades. There's a little teeny one and kind of a sort of a hunter-ish and a kitchen knife. And I'm a fan of the kitchen knife, but they're all beautiful. Will, what have you been to this show before, and what's kind of been your experience so far?
Yeah, thank you for saying my knives are beautiful. I appreciate that. I haven't been to this show before. Billy has been inviting me for a couple of years, but July is normally a busy season for me. And so last year I was at a knife show in South Africa, and I forget where I was the year before that. But I was very excited to come out here. I have a lot of friends in the kind of Mac and tactical knife world, and so it's really fun to get to hang out with them, especially at a little bit of a smaller show. Yeah, no, it's been interesting. There's not a whole lot of people in my genre at this show. There's kind of two other knife forgers, Dave Lish and Nick Rossi, and so not really our clientele walking around, but it's been really interesting to get to meet clients and collectors from more of the tactical world. A lot more tattoos.
Yeah, that's always the joke with our crowd is someone will say, "Where's so-and-so?" You say, "Oh, he's the guy in the black T-shirt with the backpack over there at cargo shorts." Easy to spot in a crowd. Will you want to pick a piece and talk to us a little bit about it?
Sure. Yeah, so I think that probably the most unique piece that I have on my table is this absolutely tiny little baby Damascus integral. So it's a twisted S's mosaic Damascus pattern integral bolster with a V-fit into a vintage emerald paper micarta handle. It's about 4.5 inches overall with a little longer than an inch long cutting edge. And I really enjoy doing these because they're a fun blending of the style between kind of the tactical and then the kind of classic knife forging world, where I get to use like a really hot material from the other side of the knife world and incorporate it in a kind of a unique way into something that's kind of done in my signature style. And I know generally kind of folding knife makers seem to really appreciate tiny little baby knives, and so this was a really fun piece to get done for the show. It presented a lot of unique challenges doing something this small. It's quite a bit harder than doing something larger, but I'm really glad that it came together and turned out as nice as it did.
It's a beautiful piece. And I like that there's shapes that are in your designs that are pretty obvious cues, right, that are your stuff, and it's really cool to see how you're able to make it fit in that space, right, with the kind of almost like a 3-finger handle and a very, very tiny little blade. So not everybody translates well when they make that stuff get small. Was that kind of one of the challenges to figure out?
Yeah, so I spend a lot of time drawing, like a lot of time drawing, and so I have thousands of designs drawn up that have kind of concreted my style in my mind more than the actual pieces that I've done. That being said, when I go to make a new piece, I almost always design something new as opposed to choosing an older design. But yeah, it's not easy to scale the design up and down necessarily. It can really create quite a few problems. Sometimes it would maybe work better to have a different shape in the handle for something this small. And so it was definitely a good challenge to try and I've done fatter versions of this that were maybe twice as wide, but I wanted to do something a lot slimmer, more scalpel-like, and so it did take me a long time to figure out how to make it look right. I get really, really, really particular about the shapes that I have in my knives, and so it's always a little bit of a headache to try and make it look just right. But I think it always looks better in person than it does on paper. So.
Balancing the proportions of, like you described, scalpel, it's very much that look, right? Without it getting weird. Seems like a big challenge to make that happen. Yeah, it's a really pretty piece. We're going to try to trick you to come on the show with us sometime if you're interested.
Awesome. I think that would be an awesome opportunity, and I'd love to do it.
Thanks, Will. Appreciate your time.
All right. Very interesting young guy doing fantastic work. I sent you a picture, Sean, of that little scalpel knife that he was showing me as we were walking through stuff. And one of the things that I really, really like about Will, beyond being well-spoken and, obviously incredibly good at what he does, is he seems to be on a, for lack of a better description, a pilgrimage, right? He's all over the country. He's all over the world working with people and learning. And man, that's just fantastic, right? It's really, really cool to see. And I really like that part of it. I think that's really fun. And he is clearly very passionate about what he does. And, he's got great designs and he's doing super clean work. You can't ask for more.
No, and dude, he's only going to get better. That's the scary part.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. All right. The next person that we spoke with, Sean, you want to introduce this one?
Yeah, my buddy Brian Fellholter. Man, Brian, now saying JB's sharp. Brian is beyond sharp, man. He just thinks on a different wavelength than everybody else.
Yeah.
And man, to be honest with you, I'm proud to call Brian a friend. He's a dyed-in-the-wool asshole, but he always treats me pretty well, so that makes me feel special.
He'd be the first to admit that.
Oh, he'd take pride in that.
He'd take pride in that, yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think that's the most interesting part to me about Brian is the fact that he is unafraid to go off in a direction, right? And we'll have to talk to him sometime on the show, because I think it'd be great to understand more about, like, how does he get from heading this direction to, 160 degrees off course, right?
Yeah.
Working on something completely different and being successful at it, by the way, along the way. It's kind of a fascinating thing.
Really is.
I'm here at PNWCI with Brian Fellholter. Brian, good to see you, man.
You too.
So, how's the show been for you?
It's a wonderful show. Everything's going great. There's lots of people. The table's been busy. And once again, it's Oregon. We're having a great time.
Awesome, man. And always good to see you.
You too.
Brian, you're doing, I had a question.
Yeah.
You're making yo-yos.
I am.
And I saw you mention something about modules, using a module that's similar to somebody. What is the module thing all about?
The modules, a module's not it. What I'm doing is what are they called? Side effects. There's a company here, actually relatively local, an Oregon company called One Drop. They're the biggest yo-yo manufacturer in the U.S. And they developed an interchangeable axle system some years ago. And they licensed it to me to use because they don't make them out of titanium, and I'm making titanium yo-yos, and all their stuff is all aluminum. So they licensed it to me with the deal that I also make them for them so that they can sell titanium axles. So with my yo-yo, it uses their axle system really just to hold it together, and you can change the weight and the behavior of the yo-yo a little bit. And then my yo-yo itself actually it's a fixed axle, but I make a bearing size axle for it. So it's different than anything else on the market. And I make them out of titanium and also out of tersite. But you can put a bearing in it. It doesn't have to play as a fixed axle yo-yo.
So pens, knives, yo-yos.
Pens, knives, yo-yos, lights, shot glasses. I'm just looking at the table, what all we brought, and there's new stuff here. I've actually figured out how to make pens with G10 inlays and with carbon fiber, and the G10 is brand new for this show. I only got the material in on Monday, and here we are Saturday. I'm selling them. Yeah.
Awesome. So we'll have Brian come on and join us for an episode. I think it'll be a really interesting conversation.
We've got some years behind us, so we can probably come up with some things to talk about.
One or two,
yeah.
Thanks, Brian.
Absolutely.
And that, my friends, is what we call foreshadowing.
Definitely a foreshadowing. I think it's going to be fascinating. I look forward to seeing where it goes. It is guaranteed to ping pong in many, many directions.
Oh, yeah. How could it not?
Right.
Brian is eclectic if he's nothing else.
Yeah. There have been a couple guys that may have made yo-yos over the years that I can think of. But it's pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. And Brian's is probably going to be top of the heap, or he wouldn't release it.
Right. And are we surprised that he's now OEMing parts for somebody else's yo-yos? No,
not even slightly.
Not at all. All right. So next I sat down for several minutes with another mastersmith, bladesmith named David Lish. We've talked about David Lish a number of times on the show. We've oohed and ahed over his work many times. David's a very, very cool guy, very interesting person to talk to. And so David and I sat down to talk about his work, about the show, and about a show that he's got coming up that's kind of focused on his kind of work. And so he's been, I think, working on trying to get a little bit more interest off in the tactical folder part of the world that this show really was made up of. And so some interesting words from David Lish. All right, I'm here with knife maker David Lish, and we've talked about David's work many times on the podcast when we've done our picks episodes for knives of a certain style or made a certain way, and David's work has come up frequently, so I was very happy to come across him here at the Pacific Northwest show. David, it's an interesting show, right? There's kind of a crazy cross-section of stuff here. It's like gun stuff, knife stuff, everyday stuff, mostly tactical-based stuff, but it's an interesting show because it's like a whole other slice of the population, right? It's not like going to a New York show where that crowd, right? They have their own vibe. What's your take on the show here in Seaside?
Well, first of all, the vibe of the show was really exciting, and it was wonderful to meet so many new people and see so many people waiting to get in. And you're right, the one thing I didn't expect to see was guns for sale at the show, but I thought that was really cool, and I might be getting myself a new Glock. But yeah, it was a really neat show, and I knew coming to the show it was more tactical orientated, and seeing what the guys are doing nowadays and just where they're taking this stuff, and some of the conversations I had with some of the tactical makers was really interesting and neat. And a lot of times I don't have that time to talk with people that much like at Blade Show, so to get to meet them and see where they're coming from was really cool, and I've enjoyed that. And we're going to go to the fireside hangout tonight on the beach, and so we're really just kind of having a little vacation here. It's only 3 hours from my place, so we've really enjoyed it. It's the first time at this show, and got to see so many people that I've known and watched their work for a while and meet them, so it's been really cool. And the vibe in the room was really great, and I saw a lot of guys having just wonderful shows, and it's been fun. Yeah.
Awesome. So, David, you had a piece. I asked you to grab something that you wanted to talk about. Why don't you tell folks at home? This is a funny thing when we do episodes. We'll we'll talk about fantasy knives or art knives or different categories, and we'll each make picks of knives that we like. And some of the pieces are so cool, but they're really hard to explain. And we always have to remind ourselves that people aren't looking at what we're looking at. So maybe talk to people about what this piece is and why you wanted to talk about it.
Okay, well, I will talk about what this is. And typically, if you were going to describe this knife, this would be called a Mountain Man folder. And the Mountain Man folder's been around for ages. Everybody knows it's made out of a piece of deer horn. So if you imagine a piece of deer horn with a blade coming out of it that is a folding knife, and that's what I have here. But I've tasked myself with taking the Mountain Man folder into the 21st century. And I think you're going to see that when I open this up for you, because this is unlike any other Mountain Man folder you've seen. When you open it up, it's like a slip joint. Notice it comes up and locks into place. You hear that? Now, it opens up and has a modified slip joint. And what's really unique about what I've done to it is on all the other Mountain Man folders, the spring is held on by a clip and a couple of nails in the back and a clip that goes over the spring, and the spring rests on top of the stag, and then it works like a slip joint up in the front. Well, what I've done here is, you can see I've cut a channel into the back of the stag, which is no easy task. This is a tine, basically. It's a bent tip of the horn, so it's not like it's tapered and curved, much like the blade. And so by doing that and cutting that slot where the spring rests, and I've got three rivets going through it at the back and a plate. Do you see the plate inside? That plate is what allows me to do it this way, where the spring is held super solid. I hope the listeners are able to picture this now in their mind. This plate that's riveting this spring into a slot in the back, and that allows it to, now I'm closing it, and you'll hear when it closes, also has beautiful detent in the closed position. And it has a little forging on the back. But I really want to talk about why I actually am making this style knife, because everybody knows me for my big buoys and my kitchen knives and my mosaic Damascus and my legacy knives and my kind of fantasy crazy knives that I like to make. But I'm just going to be honest, okay? The knife industry, for the type of knives that I make, and I think maybe just the whole knife industry in whole right now, is seeing a slowing. And there's several reasons. One is the economy. Two is the pure saturation of the amount of knives that are on the market. So we've got all these guys competing for the same dollars. And I've been in the game for a while, and I'm sort of feel the slowing. And I'm doing great. Still, don't get me wrong, I'm selling my knives. I've got a loyal fan base. But I feel it's time to make a change, and this is where I'm going. I'm going to start making more of these Mountain Man style folders, and just folders in general, but this calls to me because each one is individual knife, and no two horns are the same. And so the things that you can do with it by modifying the way that they work, and I've got another idea, because this was actually quite tricky. You notice I've got the Damascus pins on the side where it pins through the blade. All of that stuff is tricky. So I am going to change the top part of it, but I'm going to keep this slot in the back, and just each one, you have to solve the problems. And that's what really excites me about knife making, is problem solving. And I have to stay excited and interested in the work. So this really it rings all those bells for me. So this is where I'm heading. And if you guys wanted to see this, you could go to my Instagram. I posted it recently on there talking about it and talking about my change, where this is where I need to go. So that's why I'm excited about this piece and wanted to show it to you. And it's pretty exciting for me. So are you feeling like they got that?
No, absolutely. So David, this is one piece of horn. It's not split into halves.
No, it's one piece of horn, but I cut the center out. Notice it's even tapered where the blade is. It's not one. That's pretty tricky. You cut a tapered slot, and then the spring is then cut into the back. So this material, first of all, has to be super solid, because this is a stout knife. It's going to last forever, really. It'll be a part of history. I assure you of that. And I'm still solving the problems of making this knife, so it's still very exciting for me. And I've got my knife show coming up in September 7th in Yelm, Washington. There's information on my Instagram about it. But after that knife show, I'm going to dive into this. And when I say that, I mean it seriously. I'm going to start dedicating more time to this pursuit, and that's partly because of what I was saying earlier, that folders are hot right now, and I just think it's getting harder and harder to sell the big fixed blades. The collectors for those knives seem to be, they're all getting older. You know, it's been good for a long time, but it's just in the air. It really is that it's time to make a change, and I think you'll always be able to sell some of those knives, but it seems that the market is shifting, and who knows what's going to happen in the future. But I think anybody that's in the game seriously needs to keep their options open. Diversification has always been key. You have to be diversified. That's why I make kitchen knives. Hey, I started making spatulas. I make taco forks, you know. I'll make whatever, you know, I feel like making that I think is going to keep it interesting and exciting for the people that are following me and are looking for my work and looking for interesting pieces. So, I mean, I'm excited to be on your podcast, to be honest with you. It's just kind of cool that you ran into me and wanted to be on there, because I do got some cool stuff going on, and I do got a knife show coming up in September in Yelm, Washington, which is, it's almost like trying to start a fire in a rainstorm. That's what it feels like, you know, trying to get these people to come out there. First time show. I don't really, haven't done it before, so I don't have a lot of experience in it. I'm just trying to put the word out as much as possible. And look, now I'm on a podcast. So things are falling in line, I'd say. And I got a real list of exciting young makers and just some blacksmiths. There's going to be ironwork at the show. And it's in a beautiful location. It's in the Yelm Wedding and Event Barn.
I think I saw the venue. You showed it on your Instagram before in the past, maybe when you were first kind of deciding on that spot. It's a gorgeous space.
Yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful big facility and with a big parking lot. So there's room for the show to grow if people come out and support it. And the guys that I brought, my biggest fear is that I invite all these guys to the show, and although we're going to have fun and, you know, have some good food and stuff like that, that they come and they don't sell their knives, which they'll be all right, because I told them going in that could happen. You know, you don't know when you're trying to start something new. But yeah, I mean, if you don't try, you never know. I turned 65 this year. Yeah, I know it don't look like that, but I really do. And I have to do this now. And if it doesn't hit it off, you know, if it doesn't get some legs underneath it, I'll understand, you know, it'll be all right. But if I don't try, I'm not going to be all right with that. If I don't give this an honest go and say, hey, look, I have this idea, I want to try it, and gosh, how many times have we had an idea and not done anything about it, right? So I can't do that anymore. I've got to give this a go. The timing's right. We don't have a show like this in the Seattle area. There's nothing like it. There's no place where like-minded people can get together and look at knives and talk about knives and, you know, get that thing going, you know. I mean, look what they did here. Look at this. I mean, these people, I was seeing everybody selling knives. Everybody's having a great time. The vibe was great. And the format, you know, one, it's in Seaside, so that's beautiful. We're having a blast here. But they made this happen. This was just a dream a few years ago. This is just a thought. And now they've got all these great makers in here having fun, people coming in and mixing it up. And the vibe is awesome. So it might be a little harder to pull off out where I'm at, but doesn't mean I'm not going to give it a try. I've got to give it a try.
Yeah, you got to live with no regrets, right? You don't want to not do it and wish you had. Yeah. David, thanks for taking the time to talk with me.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, and I appreciate your listeners. And anybody who's in the Seattle area, September 7th, go to my Instagram if you want information, having a knife show. And sorry I keep plugging it, but I got to try and make it happen. And it's great talking to you listeners out there. Thanks a lot.
David, what is your Instagram? We've talked about it before and shared it on our Facebook page and stuff, but let folks know where they can find you.
If you go to Instagram and just punch in my name, David Lisch, which is Lisch, I will come up and you'll see all the knives on my feed. And not only knives on my feed, but if you go to my feed, go to the storyline, and there's a whole bunch of free classes you can take where I just spend time and teach you how to make everything from forges to putting on hammer handles to forging penny guards. You know, there's a bunch of free information out there. And that's the other thing I do is I teach. So if you're trying to learn, I love teaching, and people know that. I don't really advertise it, but I guess I just did. So there's that. Right. All right.
And David goes fishing. He shares his fishing adventures.
I love fishing. That's the blessing of living where I am. I've got 2 different rivers, 3 minutes in either direction, and a lake 6 minutes away. And it's a great. I'll never get to actually retire, but that's my retirement. Fishing in the morning before I go to work, and I love doing that. So if you like watching fish be tortured, come to my Instagram, David Lish. Yep.
It's beautiful country, clearly. All right, thanks again.
All right, so that's some good stuff from David. He's got this show coming up, so like I said, be sure to check it out. He's got some details in his comments there, and we'll probably share them in our Facebook group here once we get this one posted. Really, really stunning work from that guy. He's always another super creative guy, right? Kind of out there working on all kinds of crazy stuff.
Man, it's nice to see guys in every discipline when they're, really pushing the boundaries of that discipline. And he is definitely one of those guys.
Yes. Yep. All right. And then our last chat was with Luke Burnley. And you can grab a cup of coffee and settle in for a little bit on this one. It's a pretty lengthy chat that I had with Luke. And one, it was awesome to see him. And I was fascinated by some of the stuff that he has going on lately, right? He and Maddie have really diversified. Is that the right word, Sean? They've really gone in lots of directions with that business.
Yeah, I think diversified works.
Yeah. So we get into some of that. We get a little bit of mindset about how to stay relevant. And, Luke's got lots and lots of things going on. And there's traps there, I think, right? Where maybe you can dilute yourself a little bit if you're not careful. Guys like Fellholter dilute themselves and then spring a whole new part of their business and it's successful, right? But it's easy to get lost along the way. And so Luke and I get into that a little bit as well. So here's Luke Burnley.
Okay, I'm with Lucas Burnley. We're just chatting about life and a bunch of things going on here at the show and outside the show. This is my first time coming, and it's been a very interesting little show to take in so far. Interesting group of people and cross-section of stuff that I would say is slightly atypical for a show. What's your take on this show and what it's like, and what's your take on the vibe in the room?
It's like you said, really interesting show. It's going to be a lot to talk about. It's really good feel, I think, affected pretty heavily by the fact that there's actually a local presence. So you have a lot of people that are coming in from Portland, coming in from Eugene, and you can feel that. And for me, I think early on, a lot of the shows that I did, they had that. So you go to the PKA show in Denver, you get people from Denver that are there. We're very used to being in a state of shows where everybody flies in. Okay. And so you see the same people at every show, which I love and is like a part of why we do shows. But this has that extra little component of just like a natural audience. And I really like that. But it's also still an enthusiast show where you're not getting people that are kind of just coming in off the street. Everybody knows what they're here for. What else? How deep do you want me to go on this show? Because I actually have a lot of thoughts on it. I mean, it's like, okay, right now I'm going to say that I think this is one of the best shows in the nation. I think from a maker standpoint, I think it's hitting very, very heavy. When you look at the maker roster, it's noticeable, like who's in the room, and it's growing. I think when Billy and Nick started it, I think it was a very tight-knit group of collectors and makers who were here. Over the last couple of years, I'm starting to see like the value of that and like the kind of the overall like feeling of the show is spreading, because this year especially, I'm seeing makers that like have not done the show before, and I'm seeing collectors that have never made the trip out. And that is, I don't know, I think it's a really good sign. I'm a huge fan of shows that are in small towns where you can bring your family and hang out and walk out from the show and have dinner. You mentioned something that you see different makers and product, and I'd be really curious to hear what you're seeing from walking around.
Yeah, well, like you said, there's a very local feel. I like that, right? It's different, which is true, right? The New York show's the same way, right? Tons of local New York guys, tons of people fly in. I fly into New York Same here, but it's got a unique vibe to it, and I think it would be a disservice to call it a micro blade show. But Billy has been very has had a warm embrace for like the whole gun side of things, right? So Silencer Co's here, Glock is here, and they've really strongly embraced the show, and I think that's really cool because it's all knife adjacent stuff, and the audience, I think, appreciates that stuff. So that's interesting to see, right? The leather and soft goods guys that are here are really cool. They make beautiful stuff, right? And seeing that as an accepted and embraced part of the scene is really cool. So that kind of variety, I think, is really interesting to see and healthy. I think it's all complementary. Everybody wins, right? Nobody's not spending stuff on Burnley brand stuff because they're spending it on Glock stuff or whatever, right? So they all just are, peas in a pod together, and I like that piece of the story.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's done in a really organic way too, because Billy, his background is in the firearms industry. So for him to bring in a few of these brands, they're coming in essentially kind of like as friends or as someone closely related in his network, not as a table sale. So they're not coming into a room where they don't know, I guess, they don't understand like the culture. It's a weird thing to say because knives and guns are so closely tied, but there is a cultural difference between knife shows and gun shows, or SHOT Show and Blade Show. There's a big difference. In here, it feels really, really kind of organic. The other thing that Billy and Nick have done is kind of like they really create a lot of value for people who are coming in. Like the giveaways they do are nuts, right? Like Glock's giving away guns. I think Oregon Rifle Works, Silencer Co. is giving away a suppressor. Like, that's crazy. They do it for collectors, and then they also do it for makers. So this is definitely like a show where you're like, it has that like grassroots feel of like, it's for makers by makers, you can tell, but it also is really playing up like the fun aspects of our industry to collectors. And that's what, all of this stuff is like, it's community building, right? Like as a maker, why do we go to a show? It's not for sales, right? Sales are great, but we can sell from our website. This is to connect with people, to spend time, to connect with other makers, and it's awesome. It feels really, really good. I hope that this is the beginning of like a long running show. I would imagine it's pretty, time intensive to like put on, but yeah, man. For me, this is 100%, I think, as far as shows, I don't know, like there's so many shows right now. That's the problem, right? Like there's so much noise. I really think this one like stands on its own. It's not just like in the rush of like, let's have another show. Right? And the money's in the room and the product's in the room. That's what it takes, right? Like, so.
Yeah, and I think this is by far the biggest one of these they've had so far. And it's still not too big. Right, it's got a nice small show feel still, which is great. And there's a lot of people in the room, but it's not out of control. It doesn't feel super crowded. It's not 1,000 degrees. It's not people being weird. Just everyone's in a very chill place, which it doesn't always happen at knife shows. Right, I really like that part of it. So, so you've been doing the podcast thing. You want to talk a little bit about that show and who you do it with and what it's all about?
Sure. Yeah, so I think we've had the pod for about a year. It's me and TJ Schwartz. It just kind of came around because we found that we were on the phone like, once a week, and we would have these like really deep conversations, kind of deep for us, in depth. And TJ was like, man, there's a lot. It's like we're talking about a lot of things that are kind of relatable inside of our industry, but like also I think inside of our age group. And he was like, can we just try it? And I was like, sure. And this kind of came at a time where I was also struggling with like consistency around social media. And the idea of like sitting with a friend, having a conversation was really approachable. And man, it's been awesome. We've been pretty consistent overall. I was telling you before we started recording, like I think with Blade, this show, kids in summer, like we missed like 3 or 4 episodes, and you look and you're like, this is life, right? But that's part of it. So yeah, and it ranges like conversations. I mean, it's pretty heavy on the kind of work life, like kid time, spectrum. Yeah, and like realizing that like in a lot of ways there's no balance. There's just like making the things that are important work when they are important. I've had a few people come up at this show even and say they listen, and I think one of the nicest pieces of feedback is like just that they're like, yeah, I got kids right now. And it's like I'm not a maker, but like I listen to the show and like I love, because I'm dealing with this, and realizing like you can speak on something kind of topical without it being 100% necessary for that to like be the only person listening to it. They're like, yeah, I'm not a maker, but it's still interesting, it's still relevant, and it's like pretty cool, so yeah. And manageable. That's the biggest thing, man, is like, how do you connect, how do you build community, how do you like reach out and have some kind of a connection with people? And I think it's a pretty good way to do it. Yeah.
I know for us, you mentioned this at the beginning of that comment. For us, it's been super healthy feeling. And we don't publish as often as you guys do. We're more like every 2 weeks or maybe every month. Depends on life and what's going on. But that sort of check-in conversation, I think some of us myself for sure, do a bad job of making time for, right? Just to shoot the shit with your pals. And so for us, I think for all 4 of us, it's been very healthy to have that time. And even if it's not talking about day-to-day stuff, what we find is in all of our coordination for the show and getting stuff together and, when are we going to record and all that, there's just like a running open conversation that was really good for us. And then when the whole COVID thing happened, it gave us an outlet, right? That was a blessing, I think, for sure, to be able to get together and talk and have someone to talk through as everybody figures out what that all means. And that part of it's been really good. Well, so we talked a little bit before we started recording about side quests. You and Michael both are big side quest guys, maybe sometimes to your own demise. You have some stuff going on here that I thought was really interesting. I saw on your social media. Maybe why don't you tell us a little bit about that for people that aren't here?
Sure. I mean, like just to touch on like the topic of side quests a little bit. So I got like late in life diagnosis with ADHD, which makes probably more sense than like anything ever. Anybody that's like knows me well is like, oh yeah, that's like ridiculous. The beauty of it is with like the knowledge of it and like the acceptance of it, there's actually like a lot of like strengths that are awesome. It's just figuring out how to wrangle those and like understanding their limitations. One of those strengths is side quests, right? Which is basically it's a hyper focus. A lot of times that hyper focus is not in any way controllable for me or related to something that is a priority. But if I do it, I will be both fulfilled and that thing will be efficient. Around this show, the side quest was essentially last year, me and Joey were walking around. We ended up in an antique mall. When we were leaving, I think Joey just said, man, it'd be fun to like set up in an antique mall. And it stuck. And so this year, we basically did a pop-up show inside of the antique mall before this show opened. And it's kind of it's an experimental thing. Like we did like vintage clothing that we like modified with our logos, like screen printing stuff. We did old pieces of collections that we've released in the past, kind of like, pimped out or tweaked. And then we did like things from like our collection vault, and like we did patches that are 15 years old that we had stuck away. And part of that, I think, is like, I've got all this stuff that since I did it, maybe has some like historical relevance to collectors, but I'm just like hanging on to it. I'm like, it's cool to put it out. The other thing that this ties into is like, I love being able to come into like a town like this, and you're like, I know knife people are great, right? You go to Blade Show, all the bartenders love us. Like, we tip well, we're good. And I was just thinking, like, man, it's fun. It would be fun to be able to do this, bring in a bunch of money, let the indoor flea market take their cut, and just like, and I'm not there. It's passive, right? People can go and like look and talk about it, and like, and the reality is that I put as much time into that thought process and planning and show as I probably close to what I did for show prep. That's a side quest. Worth it? Yeah, I don't know. Like, worth it for me. I've gotten some really nice feedback from people, and it keeps it fun, though. That's the key. Like, I look at everything from like a long game perspective. Me being efficient all the time and being focused actually doesn't work. And I tried for years and years. Like, I'm really good friends with Tom Crine. I tried to work like Tom for a long time. It is not a possibility. We're different. Our brains are different. So you figure out what works and how to feed it, and like, you know, keep it on a leash sometimes. Yeah, I need to talk to Michael about it more, because I'd be curious, like, where, like, I've found for me, like, a lot of times it'll be anywhere from like a 2-week to a 3-month cycle, and then it'll change. When I was younger, not knowing what was going on, I was really hard on myself, because I'd be like, no, I'm doing this. I want this to be the thing. Now I'm like, whether it's hobbies or work, I'm like, cool, this one is gone, and I just actually have another piece that I slide in, like playing Tetris. And that has been the game changer. Like, whatever the next hyper focus is, like, it'll come. Yeah.
And it's okay.
It's okay.
Yeah.
That's the key, right? It's okay.
Yeah.
Like,
and okay to the point of, maybe I can actually make this work for me. Yeah, no, absolutely.
yeah, you don't push the rope. Like, there's a point where you let it happen, and then it changes, and you're like, cool, what is replacing it? Like, what else is there?
So that's kind of an interesting thing that I think that you've done a great job with, is the whole, like, it's more than pocket tool, knife, patch, coffee mug, right? You've spent a huge amount of time and effort and money in going off and building a much larger brand that I don't think we see a lot in this industry, right? I think people are starting to do more of it, but is that a positive compatibility with the kind of stuff you just talked about, or do you? I know there's an economic aspect to it, right? That's smart of trying to make sure you have a diverse portfolio of stuff really to offer to people, but for other makers, because we have lots of maker listeners who are thinking about doing stuff like that, maybe talk briefly about the advantages of that and what it's kind of brought to you, because I know it's both rewarding and also a good business plan thing.
Yeah. I mean, this is something that I could go on. We could talk for 4 hours or more about. On a basic level, diversification is survival, right? And if you're going to do this and be in this industry for a long time, there's going to be areas where, like, if all goes well, you're really popular for a while, and that'll fade. And then if you have diversification, maybe something else is popular when something else is dropping off. And this could be industry or just your client base, anything. From a working standpoint, I think diversity is super important. Again, this is maker specific. There's a lot of people that, like, they design the thing they design and then they're happy making it forever. I have those products, but I wouldn't be able to only do those and not, like, step outside. Long game, I think it makes a more robust brand. And, like, I think of myself as a brand. I'm a maker, but I think of what I do as, like, a brand. I think being able to change the type of work that you do and still have it feel authentic is incredibly valuable. And just realizing that, like, what you like making right now may not be what you like making in 15 years. So if you give yourself some, like, flexibility, learn some different techniques, like build in other like areas of the industry, I think it creates a lot of resiliency. And I mean, shows this ties into pretty big. I came up, like when I first started doing shows, and like you would have seen me at those shows, it's like I made knives, I showed up with knives, and that was it. I was never like a real EDC tool designer. Like that's not like the pocket that I fit in. The Sci-Pop was kind of the thing that I came up with where it really developed a following, and it was by accident, totally by accident, right? I was doing that so I would have something on the table after my knives sold. And the irony is that now that's the first thing that's gone. But at shows, if we're talking about connection, I can show up with 6 or 10 knives, or I can show up with 50 Sci-Pops. That's 50 people that I get to connect with from a product standpoint, and that is, to me, that's incredibly valuable, right? So, yeah.
I really like the word robust in that description, right? It gives it more substance. There's more beef to what you have going on, and I think, I find lots of times when I talk to knife makers, for guys that do it full time, or maybe who have just a part-time day gig, there is no retirement plan, right? And they eventually the light bulb goes on, like, oh shit, okay, I'm going to do this till I can't walk anymore or something, right? There's like a whole complication at the end of the tunnel somewhere, but it's kind of down the road, and I'll figure that out later. And I think the beauty of what you're doing, Emerson's done a lot of it too, right? The diversification thing, and he's done all of that for his family, right? To help create something that can live on. And, if they want to take one branch of that and run, they can, right? Or they can continue this portfolio or split it up somehow. And so I think it's super smart. And I don't know that everyone's wired that way, right? That's the reality. Like you said, some guys just want to make what they make, and they're happy doing it. And if that works for them, great, right? If you can do that till you're ready to be done doing it, then good for you. But I think seeing a lot of the newer guys coming in who, some of them are extremely talented from a design perspective, probably be really well served to think through a bigger picture like that, right? And see where it takes them.
Yeah, I think this, like, I'm coming into 22 years of being a maker, and I started really, really young, and I came in an era where it was still like, there's like a toughness to it, and it was like pre-social media, and like you just do the work and you like get it done kind of stuff. There was never, everybody told me I couldn't make a living doing it, and like, of course, I have ADHD, and so I'm like, no, you can't make a living doing this. I will prove that wrong. But like through that time, I got to see a lot of my idols kind of like, get older, and I got to see what would happen when, your eyesight starts to go, or when, cash is tight. And so like I went really hard into like learning about investing and like really thinking about the fact that like, hey, there is a day that will come that either by choice or not, I won't do this anymore. And so how do I address that? And so I think like for makers especially, we have this beautiful thing where we can literally make more money. You can make product, and you can be like, I'm going to make one extra knife, and I'm going to take that knife and I'm going to put it into a Roth IRA, or I'm going to make a knife. And like, okay, this knife is my Roth, this knife is my SEP or my HSA. And it's like, man, kids, family, like I've been injured, like you got to like, so I look at like knife making from the standpoint of, if it is working, if for me, that means that I have to be able to pay for, medical insurance. I have to be able to pay life insurance. I have to be able to put money for my kids' schools and money for our retirement. Like that to me is working. And so in certain ways, that's made certain types of decisions easier because I know that it requires a certain type of consistency, which is automatically hard for me. So I've figured out the ways to do that. And like for me, I always use this analogy of like a bicycle wheel or a motorcycle wheel with a spoke missing. So like that spot is hitting the ground. It's just not always hitting it at the exact same time, right? Going a little faster, it's hitting different. And for me, that is like, that's what consistency looks like. So yeah, new makers, like that's a big one. Like if you're not if you're not able to diversify, figure out how to create some type of passive income. Doesn't even have to be in the knife industry. Our business is like 3 components. So we have the custom work that we do in the shop. I have the factory design work that I do, which is, that's pretty passive, past me designing. And then we have Burnley brand, which is kind of like this hybrid. The irony at this point is that all of those could kind of be like a full-time deal, and it is actually too much to manage, and I haven't figured out a solution for that. So like some things are working, and it's like, what do I kill? I haven't figured that out.
Not an easy one to figure out, right? It's interesting.
It's the scale issue, scaling specifically. So you're talking about Emerson, Hinderer, these guys actually figured out at a point how to scale their business past themselves. We, I think, are just probably starting to approach those real conversations where it's like, what is the next stage? Do I want to make customs all the time? No. Does the work that I'm able to do now satisfy even a portion of the demand around it? Like, no. And so it's like, what is the next conversation? And like, that's like what's in the back of my head right now.
Yeah, I think I've had lots of conversations with makers who say, I just want to make knives, or I just want to make my widget that I make. And that's great, but they also don't want a day job, right?
Yeah.
They also don't want a day job, and the reality is that means they need an honest to goodness, no shit, call it what you want, I call it a business plan, right? Like you need a real set of plans to get to an actual goal at some point, and if you don't, then baby, you're swinging in the breeze, and without it, you're just, I don't know, for something that I got to rely on to pay the bills and pay my house and, support my kids and my family and my wife, I can't afford to swing in the breeze. I'm not living that life. Yeah. Luke, it's a pleasure, man. Thanks for talking with me.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me. Good seeing you. Good seeing you here. Enjoy the rest of the show.
All right. Well, very interesting conversation with Luke. Lots of excellent insights into what he's got going on and into the brain of Burnley. And it's a fascinating place in there, Sean.
And would I be out of line saying that Luke is establishing Burnley as a lifestyle brand?
Absolutely. Yep. Fascinating stuff. And I'm really excited to see where he goes with it. It's been running for a long time, right? He's been working in that direction for a long time now. And it's only, I think, going to get more interesting. So we'll see where it all goes. So there we go. Sean, how many clips did we have? 12, 11, 10, somewhere in there? I don't know. It was a bunch.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
10 clips.
10.
So good. We got lots of stuff from the show. And it was really, really fun. So, we have tons of makers that listen to the show. If we're ever at a show and you want to chit chat, just grab one of us. Chances are we have the microphone with us, and we try to bring it when we travel. And of course, we don't get out quite as much as we once did. But
yeah, I'm not complaining. Well, some days I complain, but then I realize, dude, you're miserable when you're traveling. You look at it with rose-colored glasses.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, one thing's for sure. I think everybody really enjoyed the experience at the Portland show, and the environment especially, right? Even the guys who were a little bit kind of alongside some of the main crowd in the room, I think unquestionably everybody seemed to have a really nice time there. And folks like Jason and Becky Stout, I'm surprised they didn't tell the kids go home, pack their stuff up, and ship it to them.
Yeah.
They were loving it there.
Man, now it's hard not to like Seaside. It really is.
Yeah. Yeah. Anywhere up on that Northwest coast is just beautiful, right? It's all gorgeous.
Yeah, but I mean, even as touristy little towns go, Seaside is by far nowhere near the worst.
No, it's a fun spot. Tons to do, especially if you had family with you, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Fun for all ages.
Yep.
And all normally I'm not about that.
I'm not really a fun guy. All right. Well, we should probably wrap it up. Sean, you got anything else you want to hit before we close this thing out?
No, man. Looking forward to getting back on pace and, ending the year strong. Going to do some interviews with some cats. Really been looking forward to talking to basically since we started doing this.
Yep.
And as always, looking forward to doing some topicals. You know that those are my bread and butter. I can't wait to just goof around and talk about some knives.
Yeah, we got to come up with a couple of really entertaining topical things. Some of those picks episodes we had wrapped around scenarios or movies or whatever, those are really, really fun.
Always. Man, anytime. I just need an excuse to pick some knives and then talk about them.
Who doesn't like that?
Yeah.
Well, we like it anyway. We're not sure if the listeners like it, but we always have a good time when we do it.
Yeah, by and large, I get good feedback on them. So.
I think so too. All right. Well, let's make sure we say thanks again to all of our friends. Guys on Patreon, thanks for sticking with us. The folks at Giant Mouse, Bob and Sue's Terzola, Knife Joy, and Paladin 33. We appreciate y'all for helping us out and sponsoring the show. And interviews, topicals. Man, we got to get another history mini in there. We've talked about that too. So lots to do. And I think that's it, man. Thanks everybody for listening. We'll talk to you next time.
Thanks, folks. Appreciate y'all.
To learn more about our makers, you can find Tom Crine on the web at crineknives.net, in his Facebook group, Crine Knives, or in his Instagram account, @CrineKnives. For Michael Birch, check birchtreeblades.com, Facebook group Birch Tree Blade Works, or Michael's Instagram @BirchTreeBlades. For myself and the Raygun Bead Project, we're on the web at raygundivision.com. We have a Facebook group called Raygun Division, or my personal Instagram @msteiner. For those interested in photos, references from the show, or some discussion about the show itself, you can find us on the web at markofthemaker.com, in a Facebook group called Mark of the Maker, or on our Instagram @markofthemaker. Last but not least, the ultra cool and haunting background music we use for the show is a piece called Noir Guitar by Stevie's Amp Shack, found at the Free Music Archive and licensed under Creative Commons CC BY 4.0. Thanks for listening.